Friends, welcome to episode 76 of the world's friendliest cricket podcast. My name is Mohan. Folks here call me Hank, and I'm your host for this week's episode, in which we will talk, I think, bits and pieces about cricket. And I have a few folk helping me with this episode today. Now, as is normal on this podcast, we take about 45 minutes to intro the guests on the podcast and spend about 10 minutes talking about the cricket that's happened during the week. But this Tony Sebastian has made it so hard to do intros, so damn hard to do intros for the rest of us hosts. In fact, what I might even say that he has raised the bar so high. Bar bar ye pod kare, bar bar Tony intro de de. Yeah, okay. So that was my intro into the pod today. Thanks to the quality of Tony intros and our collective need to pressure to raise the bar as hosts. Yes, folks, friends, I'm going to do singing intros into each of my panelists today. First up, we have Sameer Mohan. Okay, now Sameer Mohan, most of us know that he's a long-time RCB fan. Well, he's actually an RCB sufferer. Every year, at the beginning of the IPL, he says, "Ee sala cup namde." And at the end of the year, he says, "Abhi sala cup haath se nikal gaya." He is always an RCB fan, even though he knows that RCB will never quite make it. And so here is how I intro Sameer with Ali Sethi's Coke Studio cover of Mehdi Hasan's Ranjish Hi Sahi. Here we go.
किस किस को बताएंगे समीर हारने का सबब आज किस किस को बताएंगे समीर हारने का सबब आज ये इनके टीम से खफा है तो जमाने के लिए आज आरसीबी समीर की दिल को दुखाने के लिए आज आरसीबी वजह है इस साल फिर हार के दुनिया को बताया आरसीबी समीर की दिल को दुखाने के लिए आज आरसीबी वजह है
Right. So that was an intro to Sameer, friends. Okay, so next up, we have Vikas. Now this guy is funny, he's articulate, he's witty, he's extremely sharp. Tel bhi bechta hai. ठीक है? He's also incredibly foolish. He drove around in his car on his anniversary with his wife and made her listen to our podcast. The fact that he's alive today to tell the tale bears testimony only to her kindness. So here's my intro to Vikas using Tune Mari Entriyan from the movie Gunde. Take it away.
विकास ने मारी एंट्रियां तो पौड़ में बजी घंटियां रे तंग करता है तंग पर रंग लाता है रंग तंग करता है तंग पर रंग लाता है रंग। विकास ने मारी एंट्रियां तो पौड़ में बजी घंटियां रे तंग करता है तंग पर रंग लाता है रंग। इनकी सुन कमेंट्रियां रे हंसने की गारंटियां रे तंग करता है तंग पर रंग लाता है रंग। अरे कार में पढ़ तो सुनता और बीवी को भी सुनाता है वो भी एनिवर्सरी पे ये काफी बेवकूफ है। पर इनकी सब ये हरकतें पर ना कोई वारंटी यार तंग करता है तंग रंग लाता है रंग। विकास ने मारी एंट्रियां तो पौड़ में बजी घंटियां रे तंग करता है तंग पर रंग लाता है रंग।
Right. So that's 2 done, 3 to go. Next up, we have Varun Murali. He is the sage. He's the saint. He's the sage. He's a quite calming voice of the podcast in our WhatsApp group. Always pointing to nice tweets, nice articles, always looking into deeper meaning of things, always predicting a la McGrath, many times getting it wrong also. But koi nahi, that's okay. He's well read, balanced, and the calming influence that you need in any group. And so I intro Varun using Dhimi Dhimi, Hariharan's ARR masterpiece from 1947, Earth. So here you go, Varun.
सबको बिठाकर तो जरा ज्ञान दिला दे। स्टैट्स को खोलकर छवि को बिठाकर तो जरा ज्ञान फैला दे। ये जरा पढ़ो वो जरा पढ़ो ये पिच जो है बुरी नहीं है। तिरछी नजर ये बुरी खबर ये सब होता है WTC में। तू जो पौड़ में है जरा शांत सा है। तू जब बोलता है हम सब सुनते हैं। तू जो बोलता है हम सुनते हैं बस सुनते हैं बस सुनते हैं। तू जो बोलता है हम सब सुनते हैं। धीमी धीमी बातें करता वरुण मुरली।
All right, so that's Varun Murali for you. And next up, we have a guy that lives, breathes, talks, and writes, and podcasts, and sleeps cricket. Abhishek Chopra, Choppy, Chopranos, El Chopranos. एक आदमी इतने सारे nicknames. Clearly, he must be well loved for the old adage and the jungle saying. The old jungle saying says, the number of nicknames is directly proportional to how likable a guy is. So I use one of my favorite songs, actually, Mohit Chauhan's Fir Se Ud Chala from Rockstar to intro Abhishek Chopra. Here you go.
Bits and pieces, bits and pieces, bits and pieces. चोपड़ा उड़ के भाग गया जहां क्रिकेट है और बाद में इसके बारे में लिखने लगा। अब दूर दूर लोग बाकी सुनते हैं इसकी मीठी बोलियां। हमें लाइक सब्सक्राइब और नए लिसनर्स भी मिल जाते इसको सुन के। एक टीम हारी वो टीम जीती और विराट ने सेंचुरी मारा भी ना हो। किसी मंजर पर ये रुका नहीं कभी हमसे भी ये मिला नहीं एक गिला तो है मैं खफा नहीं शहर एक से गांव एक से लोग एक से क्रिकेट एक फिर से उड़ चला ये चोपड़ा
बस फिर से उड़ चला ये चोपड़ा ठीक है okay so we have had 4 intros 4 Hindi songs and one person in Sydney namely Vijay Arumugam is really seething okay so he's saying what the hell guys this is an English cricket podcast and you've had 4 Hindi songs so I might launch into an English song at this stage to intro our next and our last guest and that is Adi. So yeah, I'm going to use a U2 song to now intro our 5th member on the podcast, well, 6th member because I'm the host, and that's Adi. Now, Adi is a keen runner, okay? He keeps on running on and on and on and on. He keeps on running. I sometimes wonder who or what he's running away from. I still haven't figured out, but today I actually did figure out what or who he's running from. He's also a voracious reader and a consumer of the most mundane articles on just about anything. I'm scared to look into his brain because I fear that I might get confused as to what might emerge out of that. So here is my intro to Adi using U2's I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. So take it away, U2.
Adi has read all the books. Adi has run through the fields only to be on the pod. Yes, only to be on this pod. Adi has read, Adi has trawled, Adi analyzes all the stats. Yes, all cricket stats. Lost in stats guru, he has this fire, this burning desire. He tries to speak in the tongue of Bogle, but once he held the hand of Borea, it was warm in the night. Adi was cold as a stone. So we know what Adi is running from. Yeah, Borea. So we know who Adi is running from.
So there you go, folks. There you have it. Adi, Chopra, Varun, Vikas, and Samir, and your host, Mohan, on today's podcast. It was really lovely having you on the podcast, folks. See you next week. Same place, same time.
Hello.
Oh, wait. Hang on. We have a podcast. We have a full podcast to do, no?
Oh,
okay. Let's get stuck into it.
Yeah. Hey, Hank, you might need to stop sharing screen, no? We go back to the gallery mode, right?
Yeah. At this point, even listeners will well and truly know what a chiddy twist is, because that's just what Hank did.
Adi read so many books to be on this pod. Like some of us got in here just because we knew Tony Sebastian.
No. Adi put many receipts and all that, and I kept collecting. Arey, mere ko hona hai pod mein.
I wrote so many letters to the editor, apropos the above. 78 episodes.
In fact, Adi even said mellifluous music without even listening to the music.
Adi, the issue you had is you send letters. You should have sent WhatsApp messages in true, like Boria style.
Yes, correct.
You poo. Anyway, so that was the intro, guys. So we now have episode 76 with the full bench over here. Let's get stuck into it, shall we? Here we go. So many things to discuss. But the first thing I want to talk about is any remaining rants and exhaust fumes from the World Test Championship. So if you have anything that remains that hasn't been said so far, let's take it away and then exhaust that part before we look into the next cycle.
Which World Championship, Da? Is it 2021 or 2023? There are so many wounds.
Oh, still the ghost of 2021 remain, is it?
True Ranjish hi sahi. This is.
I don't know much. So we're all wiser in hindsight, as they say. As a week has gone by, in retrospect, I believe the better team on paper won, and the margin of victory was so immense that I don't believe India even stood a chance versus this Aussie team in this form. I think the only thing which we might want to discuss is Ashanna's exclusion, and given that that amazing article of him came out in the Indian Express, any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah,
Again,
it is now on the ICC website also, that Ashanna article. So with credit to Indian Express and Sports Star. I think you feel for him, don't you? I mean, at the end of the day, all said and done, like cricketers go through the entire grind to be part of something like this. And unfortunately, it just seems to be part of how cricket is played. I think bowlers have a shorter period over which like they can get away with supposedly inferior performances, and even there, like spin bowlers are probably the worst treated of the lot. I mean, we should remember, like not too long back, Ajaz Patel like picked up 10 in an innings, and then he didn't play New Zealand's next 4 Test matches. So it's unfortunately how it is. I think there was some part of Ashwin which probably uh, reconciled to his exclusion as well, when he talked about how India's tour last time around went, and probably I mean, you could call it a pot shot, you could call it whatever, when he said like I should have probably just focused on my batting, but unfortunately that's just how the way the game is.
Yeah, so we will talk about this. The bowlers and horses for courses. It happens more with bowlers than with batsmen, to be perfectly honest, right? And I find that weird because you have a specialist skill as a bowler, but you also have a specialist skill as a batsman. But more often than not, this horses for courses that's discussed and that's normally talked about is more with bowlers. And from an Indian perspective, we see this played out more often in our spin department. The one time that we bucked that trend and went in a slightly different route was when Ganguly was captain, right? And famously in Leeds, we had Kumble and Harbhajan playing in that game, and that was one of the big turning points for why India won that particular game. And Ganguly famously said at that point, we play the best players regardless of the conditions and so on. So we go back and say, have we really lost that ability to be bold in our decisions? Let's not forget that Dravid, and this is completely fodder for Tony's material, right? So let's not forget that Dravid was part of that famous Leeds squad where they took those bold decisions and said, no, it's pretty cold and miserable and foggy and misty and so on, but we'll still play Kumble and Harbhajan and have Bangar opening. And that's how they could accommodate these two, right? So this is essentially the boldness of that decision. Did we lack that boldness in this WTC, whereby we just didn't want to take that decision and played Umesh instead?
I would want to still make this point that, I mean, despite the fact that Jadeja being Jadeja and having a supremely brilliant record and brilliant talent, There is no universe out there where a Shardul Thakur can replace a Ravichandran Ashwin. Your certified GOAT, who's the bowler
Hey,
who
Sameer,
gets you.
you want to be kicked out of the podcast or what?
I have been holding this thought for 2 weeks. Literally.
Seriously, I mean,
Yes.
you can replace, you can replace,
इतना intro में तेरे लिए गाना गाया अभी तू ये कर रही है.
Ehsan Faramosh, Samir Mohan.
I will tell you why I'm making the point, right? Like,
Make a different point, Ra.
no. So here's the thing, right? Like, we have not taken any ICC event seriously. I don't think this is, be it 2021 or be it this one, right? Like, we've just been like, okay, we'll arrive after IPL, we'll just come, we'll just put photos, we'll just put random shenanigans, and then one little innocent ball touches a blade of grass and we will like make hal ho hu halla and all of that, right? But truly, I mean truly and very skeptically speaking, I mean, of course, hindsight being hindsight, Ravichandran Ashwin was a definite starter come anytime, right? Why do you have to say take greatest spinner of the current era? I mean, of course, Jadeja can put his hat into the ring there, but take him and pit him against Shardul Thakur, who's kind of on the upswing, but the conditions were not really helping him, right? Like, the conditions were as much English as you can say. I mean, whatever swing that was there was exhausted, and then the pitch turned out to become like a Samruddhi Mahamarg later, which is what's happening in the Ashes right now. So when you knew that this was going to happen, you would rather account for any turn or anything that happens later in the day, right? I think we have, forget being bold, we have lost the art of reading conditions, and this arises from the fact that we are not taking things seriously. If you were taking things seriously, you would read the conditions well. Remember what happened in that Leeds game. Sourav Ganguly went hammer and tongs against the English bowlers under fading light conditions. You cannot expect something.
Let me challenge you on that. You say that we have lost the art of reading conditions. I'll actually say we never had the art of reading conditions. We still do not have it. It takes us in any tour, and you take the history of any tour that we've traveled on, right? It takes us about 2 tests before we actually get into the swing of things. In fact, most overseas tours invariably, and there are records to bear this out, we definitely lose the first test, if not the first 2 tests. And we're coming back from behind, right? We just don't read conditions properly. In a one-off test, India stands Buckley's chance in hell.
So, Hanko sir and Sam, couple of points to what you both said. So, I'll just read out some stats, and this is provided by Cricketing View, friend of the podcast.
Oh my God.
So here are the averages, both batting and bowling.
So hang on a minute, guys. At this point in time, both Sameer and Vikas have been banned from the podcast.
Everyone is Ehsan Faramosh.
No, this actually makes sense. So player A, this is batting and bowling averages outside of Asia for the last 2 years. So player A has a batting average of 17, bowling average of 30. Player B has a batting average of 35, bowling average of 32. And player C has a batting average of 20 and bowling average of 26. Now, if you were to select only 2, at max 2 out of these 3, which 2 would you select? So again, repeating, player A, batting average 17, bowling average 30. Player B, 35, 32. Player C, 20 and 26.
Hey, tell who are the players also. Don't put all this suspense and all. Okay.
This is Moneyball. You put your money where your mouth is. Okay, so I'll tell you. So player A is Ashwin, batting average of 17 and bowling average of 30. Player B is Jadeja, obviously. Head and shoulders above the other 2, 35, 32. And player C is Bedex, Shardul Thakur, 20 and 26. The team invariably went with Jadeja and Thakur because given the conditions, I think Shardul does offer a lot with the bat. And you can't obviously have Umesh as the third seamer and no one to back him up. So I think even in hindsight, I wouldn't select Ashwin. And given how Jadeja and Lyon bowled, I don't think Ashwin would have made that much of a difference either with the bat or with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, see again, that's the point, right? Australia default, however, the situation be, Lion is a surefire starter, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like that's what is happening. Why not the same for Ashwin, right? Like I can obviously make a case here by saying, why not get in a Jaidev Unadkat on a sort of like a, I mean, playing on the whole recency bias thing. He does have a fairly decent
He was
stick in the.
injured. Unadkat was injured. Yeah.
Unadkat was injured. He did bowl in the nets, but
Okay.
broadly they didn't trust him enough to in fact, even the honest thing is that even Umesh was injured. So the question is not about Ashwin replacing Shardul Thakur. It was more Ashwin replacing Umesh, right? Unadkat was injured. He couldn't play. Although he was bowling, they didn't think that he could last the entire test, although he was there. The other part is essentially Umesh is coming out of injury. The question, therefore, is Ashwin for Umesh. Anyway, this is hindsight. The question is not about whether we select the right people, whether and we don't know if Ashwin had been selected, whether he would have turned the test around or anything like that. But essentially, everything was lost in the second session, and the difference between the two teams was that second session on day one, or maybe even the third session on day one, where we just left everything. I mean, that from there, it was so hard to come back, right? So the question is, would you rather have a bowler that had control on situations and was able to rein things in, or have someone? We're talking in hindsight, but broadly the question is about boldness and reading conditions properly. I don't think we are bold. I don't think we're able to read conditions. Chopra, Varun, and Adi, you've been rather ominously quiet.
Just 3 points on this Ashwin thing. One is, did his inability to close out those 2 test matches in South Africa cause him to kind of be looked upon a bit unfavorably by the team? Because he did try. He bowled a bulk of the overs in those 2 tests, but was unable to turn it around, pun intended. Secondly, 2021 WTC final, he played. And Shastri was clear that we will go with our best 11, damn the conditions. So why the change in thinking in 23? Like for like, broadly similar conditions, I would like to believe. Thirdly, and this is where Mo, you and I will agree, we have one more reason to blame the IPL. First reason was the 2-1, we were leading the series in England and we had the momentum, but we kind of had to leave because of a quote unquote COVID scare. If not, we would have definitely won that 3-1. Again, this series, the level of preparation coming into the series, into the final was quite poor because they had a 1 week break, right? I'm not saying that the 2 weeks would have made a difference, but I reckon the bowlers might have probably got a bit more time to get their lengths in order to acclimatize, right? The margin might have still been, say, 100 runs, but we would have probably been more competitive for longer periods in the test than we did. So yeah, just those 3 points on Ash and the overall test. Now it's out of the system.
Yeah, I think for me too, there's not too much that you can do about it now. Hindsight and everything about that. Initially, when the loss actually happened, I had a lot of issues with the scheduling of this final with relation to the IPL, etc. I had a few issues with Ashwin's exclusion as well. But I think over a period of time, in the last few days, as I'm seeing, Australia play again in this first Ashes test, I'm seeing England, find a way to challenge Australia, even though quite a few of their premier bowlers who they would have liked to be in the starting 11, they're not there, Jofra Archer, etc. I think the larger structural problem is what is the depth of our squad. And what is the kind of cricket we've been playing in test for some time now. And maybe if we had like 2 first-class matches in England before this WTC final, maybe if we would have picked Ashwin, things would have been different. But things would not have been different because of how we did the process before that. It would have been different just because luck favored us or something like that. So while I still have those 2 issues, I don't think in my mind they're as prominent now. I think the rebuilding phase has been long overdue, and we've tried to postpone it as much as possible in true Indian style fashion. And I think it's something that's no longer something that we can ignore, and the sooner it happens, better. The West Indies tour is a great place to sort of do it. I think the other challenge that India will face more often than not now, till this WTC system lasts, is that you can't do too many changes in one go, because you're always going to be at the receiving end of the point system if you do that. And so the risk averse nature will tell you that if you have to not reach the WTC final this time, keep playing the same guys, keep playing the experienced guys, and keep giving them a go, hoping that they would turn around the situation, which they will. I mean, they're good enough to do that once in a while, but the kind of massive rebuilding that's needed won't happen, because of how we've done these things in the past, and because the WTC system just makes the situation even more complex for us.
Just on that, before Varun comes in, was given that we've juiced up our pitches so much in our home season, how much of it is going to start impacting us when we play overseas, right? Because at home now, our pitches spin prodigiously, right? So are we kind of getting the bench strength or the batters to be able to perform, in South Africa at the end of this year and Australia next year? Because we've gone the complete other extreme. Previously, we were able to compete well overseas because we had good sporting wickets. We were comfortable that our pace bowlers can get 20, and in conjunction with the spinners, we can easily win series. But I don't know, in the last 3-4 years, I think we've just gone the other extreme.
No, Adi, I think the answer to that is, I don't think the Indian batting in the recent past has been better in these overseas conditions because of how pitches have been at home. The reason for that is all the upcoming batters have played multiple games in these conditions against top quality representative sides, of Australia or South Africa or England. I'm basically talking about the A tour and the developmental program, which was put to an end due to COVID, and perhaps could have been restarted
Earlier.
Quite a few months, years ago. But I don't think that they've given it any serious thought, to be honest. So I think that one big thing is going to have to restart very, very soon for us to be better at batting. As far as the juiced up pitches go, I think the Dravid explanation is that we want points at home and we want them for sure. We don't want to give the opposition even a sniff at a draw or anything else. I don't think, while the stats will perhaps bear out differently, I think just by watching how Indians bat against spin, my opinion is that the juiced up pitches aren't helping the Indian batters as well.
Correct.
But we've managed to get those wins under our belt. Until we are able to, take that decision to sort of sacrifice a bit of the results in this rebuilding phase. I don't think all of these other things, random improvement in pitch, etc., is really going to help us in the long run.
But Chopra, I mean, Choppy, I'll say one thing, right? Even in our viewing time or following time, when I say our collectively, my viewing time is way longer than some of you guys. But still, but if you take the rebuilding that happened, and there have been at least 3 reconstruction phases that I have seen. One major one is in the 2000s, early 2000s, right? When we had all these, major, you name them, Sehwag, Ganguly, Tendulkar, of course, Dravid, Lakshman, Kumble. They were all part of that fabric of that national team. And then they all left, and then they had this refreshed rebuilding, which happened with the current lot, right? So I with the depth of talent that exists in Indian cricket, I have no doubt that rebuilding is possible. It's just a question of the courage and the timing of that and the phasing of it, right? The phasing out of Lakshman Dravid, Tendulkar, Dhoni and all that, in my view, didn't happen optimally, but still Indian cricket survived that. And now there is a time where that rebuilding, the regeneration, if fresh, needs to happen. And I'm pretty sure that there is enough talent over there to actually support that process of regeneration and rebuilding. It's a question of timing and phasing. And this WTC gives enough of signals to say, abhi to part shuru hai.
Yeah, I think just a couple of points. I think, look, I was on the pod last week, and at that point in time, I had made the point that, like, for me, dropping Ashwin wasn't such a big thing. Uh, I think one thing that did come out of the interview, and if Ash was being truthful, is that the decision to leave him out was made as much as like 48 hours before the game, which I found quite shocking, to be honest, given the weather in the lead up. My impression had been that the decision to leave out Ash was more driven by the conditions that we saw on day one of
On
the
the
test
day.
match.
Mm.
Evidently, that wasn't the case. And I think the other reason why I would have, like, all things being equal, would have played Ash over the others is how he bowled in that famously sporting wicket at Ahmedabad. If you remember, like, on that pitch, like, all of us came out saying that is probably the best we have seen Ashwin bowl in a very, very long time, basically. And it was a flat deck. There was nothing happening. It was like a craftsman spell there, like, all through the game. So, I mean, there is a bit of regret. I mean, I think, as Chops mentioned sometime during this week, I think there is probably a parallel article to be written about how that test match unfolds if Ash plays, especially in that middle session of play where Head and Smith just went berserk. I don't think there is a reason to expect Ash could not have done something about it. But yeah, I mean, it's all hindsight basis. The other point around the depth, I personally think that we are just being caught by the fear psychosis here. I mean, like, I think, I mean, you can't make the point both ways, right? I mean, you can't, like, not play youngsters and then say that there is no bench strength coming through. I mean, you have to give them like a reasonable shot in the first place. And the news that is coming out is very depressing. I mean, all that points out is that, like, the same set of players are going to go for the West Indies tour as well. I mean, in this next WTC cycle, if there was a give me away tour, with all due respect to the West Indies, this is the tour, right? At least to start, like, blooding one or two younger players. But it seems that the Duleep Trophy selectors were told not to pick Pujara and the likes because they were going to the West Indies. So that's, like, very depressing. And I think it all boils down to leadership and who is driving Indian cricket right now. I mean, you have a women's team which is still without a head coach. You have a men's team which still doesn't have a chairman of selectors. It's just like I think the cricket team is meandering till the end of the ODI World Cup. I think if we do well in the World Cup, then things will continue status quo. If we don't do well, then I think you're going to see all hell break loose then.
And you have a men's team with no ICC trophy for 10 years.
Just
Yeah.
one point, Vamu. England did lose on their last West Indies tour, which was the last series in the pre-Bazball era. So, I mean, West Indies cricket is another story altogether, a very sad one at that. But yeah, I mean, even if we are risking a loss in West Indies, I would definitely blood youngsters and give them a go. Anyway, nobody is going to watch that late in the night except this podcast or something, so it's cool.
So it's not a question of actually watching, it's a question of getting some points for the WTC. But enough of the WTC, and there have been enough segues to suggest we talk about other things. Apparently there's a match between Australia and England going on currently. That's also called Ash or something like that, no?
Ashes, no.
Oh, something like that. Yes, everything in the world centers around Ash, right? So let's talk about the Ashes a little bit. We are recording this on day 3, and we'll do a light touch of the Ashes because there's no point in predicting what's going to happen in that first touch on that first test. We'll do a light touch on that. Who wants to go first to talk about the Ashes and what's happening over there, essentially? Adi?
I think I mentioned in the group too. I quite enjoyed the 2.5 days of the Ashes so far. It's been good. In fact, I quite enjoyed Australia's approach yesterday, probably more suited to my kind of test match day where you have, ebbs and flows, a wicket falls, a partnership develops, then you see who's the weak link in the bowling attack and go after them. I kind of liked Australia's approach. England's approach was entertaining, wherein they pretty much smash everything that came, into their sweet hitting spot. But I still feel Australia's approach kind of is something I enjoy. I still think it's even so far. But I think what we're seeing now with England is the strength of their number 4 and number 5 bowlers are clearly, being, they're coming up short now. Which is the old theory that you're only as good as your reserve bowlers in terms of matching up with the opposition team. So yeah, that's my initial view on what's happened in 2.5 days of the Ashes.
Adi, can I say that before I think Varun wants to talk about this as well, but before that, I find, I mean, I very much resonate with what you said. I found that first day I was finding it hard to breathe. It was too frenetic for me. It was not quite, that kind of test cricket. It was almost like, IPL being played in the test scene, right? Where, everything was happening at a pace which was kind of almost near on unbearable. And then suddenly, everything fizzled out and there was a declaration in space. I'm saying, what's going on? Are you actually taking time to breathe and thinking about what you're doing? And so on. So I like your description of the ebbs and flows and everything, that the poetry to the game and everything, which is what Australia brought to the game, which is not my way of saying, we need to score at a run rate of 3.5. That's not the issue. The issue is not 4.6 or 6.8 as a run rate versus 3.5. It's just, is it all too frenetic? Are you putting on a show because you need to put on a show, or is that the way cricket is meant to be? Anyway, so but I get by your point about the bowlers number 3 and 4. That is really the difference between the two teams. Sorry, Samir, go.
Hank, just to break a reference, I think that entire first innings, and probably in hindsight, the entirety of Bazball is just like that one scene in the Bong Joon-ho's 2014 movie about trains, right? Like why am I confusing that with Train to Busan? I don't know. Please edit out the
Samir,
actual...
I'm super disappointed in you. I thought you would provide a Govinda reference or something like that at this point.
No, well, suddenly I thought about that movie, and then Train to Busan came in between. It's basically that scene where Jamie Bell and Chris Evans are stuck in the middle of the train, and then there are like enemies coming in, and it's properly reminiscent of 2003 Old Boys one take scene. Baseball is just that. It just keep coming at you, we'll keep hitting no matter what, right? Like, and there is no logic to it, there is no sense to it. At least in the movie there was this purpose that, hey, I have to get to the front of the train, or even in Old Boy he had to cross the damn alley, right? Like, there was a point to that. I don't think there is any point to Baseball, honestly, because everyone was like, oh, they're almost 400 for 8 despite doing all of this. And look, now Australia is like almost in touching distance despite losing the wicket. So yeah,
fair enough. Fair enough. Varun, go for it.
Yeah, I get the logic of Baseball from a batting perspective. I think it's just to cover over the deficient techniques. I mean, we have seen Zach Crawley over the last 2 years, right? I mean, he's pretty much been a meme even with Baseball. He'll like score 150 or 60, like some glorious runs in the 10th innings of a test series, and like get out in single digits in all other 9 innings, and you'll have McCullum say, no, we will back him, he's the future, etc. Where I have a problem is stuff like the first day declaration. I mean, that's like playing cricket as if you are the 2007-8 Australian team, when you probably are like 25% as good as that. I mean, we've seen that old Australian team do stuff like that, right? I mean, where they just used to like score 400 runs, not bother, and try and get test matches over and done in 2 days, etc. But there you could see like the gulf between that Australian side and the opposition was significant.
Yeah.
This is not the case here. I mean, logically speaking, on that wicket, looking at that declaration, we all felt that they had left quite a bit on the table there in good batting conditions, and especially when there was a good partnership going on. So all that stuff completely beats me. I think it's just vibes based. I mean, you had Paul Collingwood yesterday, like, I mean, doing a bit of a climb down after the day's play yesterday when Australia had done well, where he was talking stuff like, I mean, the objective of baseball is greater than winning or losing. It is protecting the future of Test cricket, etc., etc. I mean, that's all like humbug. I mean, like, I mean, it's just coming off like such an elevated or misplaced sense of superiority. I have called it. They're going to get like bashed 4-1. I hope it's final, just to like climb down, because I want to see like what Robkey has to say after that. Whether he still goes along and says no, final. We had great crowds coming in, like the crowd was excited, etc. You had Gareth Southgate talking about cricket and stuff like that. So it just beats me whether what's their objective. I mean, like, have they just given up on the essential aspect of trying to win a game in the first place? So if
That's the
that's
point,
the
right? So this becomes, the vehicle is less important than the virtue signaling that happens around the vehicle. So that's essentially the point, right? So the vehicle is okay. I mean, to have that vehicle that essentially says this is how we're going to play our cricket. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to call it. But when it goes to this kind of extreme, then you have to sort of signal and constantly justify the virtues around what you're trying to do. And that is essentially the problem that we have with this. It's not as if this is new, by the way. I mean, this is the kind of thing that some players used to play. It's just that now that the entire philosophy of the team has absorbed that particular cloak. Anyway, never mind.
And here's the thing, right? Like, Australia are now playing out what maidens overs with just like one single taken, one leg by taken. Has the crowd reduced? Have they like stepped out to have like scones and bagels and all of that nonsense shit? Nothing's happened. The crowd stayed. So all of this justification is just basically unicorns puking rainbow, and then that
And that's the
rainbow.
point, right? That the point is that England scored at a frenetic 5. I think it was about 5 runs per over.
5 and
Australia scored at about 3.4 runs an over, and there's nothing separating the two teams
Absolutely,
at
absolutely,
this
right?
point in time.
And Australia can actually now are in a position where they can dictate time, right? Like
Maybe.
having taken the time, now they can do the more bolder, audacious moves, because England cannot baseball this. At this point, if England go to baseball and lose 2 to 3 wickets together, I mean, they can again come in and give a justification that, we played with this brand of cricket. This is who we stand for, that stupid, we are England cricket, the animation that comes after their YouTube videos. They can put that as a justification, but I don't think in any universe they are going to win this if they're gonna, go and score at 5.5, right? Because
Let's
Australia.
let's not write the end script too quickly.
Yeah.
Because we go back to the interrupted test series that India had against England, and the last test, they wrote the script in a very England kind of
Totally.
New England kind of way. So
Totally. And also going back to the comment that I had made about baseball, the movie happens to be Snowpiercer. To check it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Link it in the show notes.
Yeah.
First of all these foreign movie references we have to edit out. Okay, I mean, this and all is not okay, Samir.
Yeah, I mean,
we want only like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada film references. Outside that, Hindi also will allow. This Korea and all too much,
It's an English movie, da.
English, Korea, whatever.
Which one? Train to Busan.
Oh,
But
Train to Busan is
no,
Korean.
we can allow Korea because there's a strong Pritham connection, right? So that's okay.
Very okay. No, I think I really think we're being too harsh on baseball. I think it's whatever it is, it's getting people to talk about Test cricket in a particularly new way, and I think that should be fine. The problem that England are having right now in this very test is that the whole strategy with respect to bowling is predicated on two very, very aging bowlers who might still have a few tricks up their sleeve, but they need to look at the future very, very soon. They did have a pace battery that was emerging, but unfortunately quite a few of them have been laid low due to injuries. Otherwise, I mean, for example, if you imagine a Mark Wood bowling really, really quick from one end on this track, and maybe a Jofra Archer or even an Ollie Stone, really going for it at the other end, and bowling bouncers to a Pat Cummins or a Travis Head, etc. I think the situation could have been very different. As far as Vamu's point is concerned about the declaration yesterday, I mean, I don't have too strong of an opinion around it. I think the fact that they were not able to prize out any wickets in that 4 over period or early next morning is probably something that is making us say that. But if they would have been able to take out one or two batters in that period, I think it would have been absolutely fine. The pitch is kind of unforgiving, and I think they are also probably going to go through a bit of a rebuilding phase, especially in the bowling department, where Anderson and Broad are perhaps
at the end
playing their last Ashes home series. And once they find new blood, a solid, good spinner, not someone of Jack Lee, better than that, I think it could be quite something to watch. And even if they lose this Ashes, I'm saying that that extreme an example, they lose it whatever 4-1, 3-2, etc. I think Ben Stokes has earned a long enough rope to continue as captain. Baz has earned a long enough rope to continue spouting this philosophy. Maybe there'll be a few changes. Crawley will go out and something else will happen. I think this is here to stay. Honestly, a lot of teams will probably reach here in times to come, because what Vamu said is true. I mean, batters don't have the technique to last over after over after over, and have patience all over them like Usman has batted. So it's going to be more or less stuff like this. Whether they call it with some fancy name or not is another thing. But I think Bazball is here to stay, and England can do particularly well with it if they're able to make the changes in their bowling ranks, especially.
Choppy, just 1 minute, Varun. Choppy, it's 5-0. McGrath has already called it, number one. And loved your article on Khawaja. We should link it in the show notes as well. Absolutely amazing. Varun.
No, I think while I agree with what Chop said, I think the one point I don't get about Bazball is, look, they have been all gung-ho about their batting. Like, to me, it just feels as if you go out there, play aggressive cricket. But that aggression has not reflected in their bowling selections. Like, they have taken a decision to leave out Mark Wood actually, and they have gone for 3 accurate seamers over Mark Wood. I think that to me uh, feels like a selection which is defensive in nature. You want to put a lid on the run scoring, etc. So I was very disappointed with that selection on day one. I thought,
But Varun,
just
who
for
said it's Baz bat and ball? It's only Bazball. So they only look after the batsmen. Baz bat means they'll look after the bowlers as well. So at the moment, step by step kar rahe hain wo log.
So it just feels like they are not walking the talk in some aspects. I think so. Yeah. So which is why I just wanted to call it out a bit. It just felt like while they being aggressive with their batting, their bowling is all line and length and defensive stuff. There's no stated aggression in the bowling attack.
Fair enough.
Just on that,
we probably have talked about Ashes. Sorry, Adi wants to buy into the
one
Ashes.
point. So Choppy spoke about Jack Leach. So I thought I'll just mix it up and ask a lateral quiz question. If the female equivalent who holds the record is Holly Colvin for England, who's the male equivalent?
Oh dear. Underwood?
Is this
No.
some like Danny Morrison or somebody like that? Number 11 max number of
No,
balls
It's
without a.
English.
English player.
English cricket. Yeah,
English
England
cricket.
cricket.
Joe Root? Joe Root?
No.
Hey,
Hey, don't chumma put guess that. Give rational for guess. Then
I'm
we'll be here all
guessing.
night.
so Holly Colvin is the record holder for women.
For women.
Um,
Women for tests for England.
Is some
oh wow! I mean, we
wicketkeeper
can edit
thing?
this out of the podcast, but Robinson has just bowled Khwaja coming down the track very uncharacteristically, and he came down the track because England had 4 or 5 fielders in a straight line in the offside in the ring.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Bazball.
Bazball.
Super.
True
Good to see
Bazball.
Okay, so we are going to say
Put Henda.
Hint is the clue is something this player was in the news in the last I would say 6 to 12 months for England.
Oh wow.
And I spoke in the context of Jack Leach. So Jack Leach is the lateral clue.
No. Yeah, I give up.
Nah.
So the answer is Rehan Ahmed, youngest player to play Test cricket for England. So that guy made his debut against Pakistan. So Jack Leach was injured and ended up going to Moeen Ali. I was wondering what happened to Rehan Ahmed.
Oh, okay. So that's the thing that threw me. I mean, not the only thing that threw me off, but the Jack Leach injury, which brought Moeen Ali into the mix. Okay, lol.
Lol. No, couple of other
Good
players I'm personally keeping a very keen eye on. First is Ben Stokes. For the longest time over the last 1 year, I thought his career is going the Khalid Mahmood Shujon way, where he'll only be captain, can't bowl, can't bat, and can't field. But same thing happened for CSK, right? Played the entire season, was on the benches, played couple of matches. But good to see him bend his back, put in a good spell, and get the wicket of Steven Smith, who's been a perennial thorn in the flesh for the Poms. So good to see him back. The other player, very, very keen to see how he goes because he was the original OG proponent of Bazball, was Bairstow. So came back from a long injury layoff, was out for almost a good part of a year and scored a runner ball 70. So good to have him back. So yeah, these two players I'll definitely keep a very keen eye on.
Very good. Moving on to other things before we kind of wrap this up a little bit, if, I guess.
I just want to make one very curious
Go for it.
observation. Steve Smith's LBW is, we've seen it somewhere, right? Like I saw the dismissal on the YouTube, the replays today, and then I realized and went back and watched some of those Twitter videos that was posted during the county. He's dismissed in the exact same fashion, right? Like ball missing a straighter one, ball hitting the thigh, him thinking it is going too high, and then even taking a review, right? So there's a lot of deja vu that is also happening with regard to Steve Smith. I don't know if he's gonna bounce back from this specific set. I mean, he will make runs, but that does specific dismissal seems very, now curious. Seems to be some repeatability in that pattern here. So I just thought to point this out.
He will bounce back. This is going to be his big, in my view, maybe I'm not one for major predictions, but this is going to be a big Steve Smith Ashes tour. He did well in the previous Ashes. I think he's going to do really, really well in this tour. So yeah, this is okay. I mean, he's just too good a player to get this to bother him, if you like.
Hey, but any idea what's happened to Labuschagne? He's still.
That was a freaky
Yeah.
dismissal. That was completely weird. First ball, right?
Yeah. But this guy, for all the talks, and he is still the number 1 Test batsman. I think he has just 1 century outside of Australia, is it? So
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think
early days yet.
I think it's still early days in his career. I think it's his second tour of England, and even though he didn't score any major runs in the previous series, I think the 1 or 2 contributions that he made as a concussion substitute are obviously fantastic. And yeah, I mean, he did a little out of sorts in India too. Couldn't really put all the plans that he had in action. But I think we are yet to see the best of him in England. So yeah, hopefully some runs for him to come up soon.
I like how Vikas pretty much did the equivalent of the Sena filter that we use for our batsmen, saying how has he fared in Sena countries. So I think we should all Marnus to the same standards. How has he scored outside of Australia?
Well, yeah, and I agree. I completely agree with this. I mean, I think just as we have a Sena demarcation for subcontinental players, I think we should have a Shiv Sena for.
I should call it. Now that Pakistan has started like hosting cricket, you should probably start calling it PISS or something like that.
No,
Pakistan,
I propose to call it Akhand Bharat actually. That is the filter.
So yeah, on that note, since you talked about Pakistan and I guess referring to Bangladesh and Afghanistan as well, there has been that test also that's been happening between Bangladesh and Afghanistan. Anyone followed that? Anyone has any views on that?
Yeah, there is only one person who can follow that, and that's like the Bangladesh Tigers' biggest fan, Vikas Singh. So, like, over to you, Vikas.
I just saw the end result and just rubbing it into fellow podcast panelist PGK, who is the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah. So Bangladesh won by a massive margin of 546 runs, guys.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's like a record, right? It's like the greatest margin in Test cricket or something like that, right? Like highest margin.
Has to be. If not this, then what, Vamu? Has to be. Yeah.
It is a massive win and quite unprecedented as well, because let's not forget. I mean, Afghanistan is not. It's not a pushover. It's not. We use terms to denigrate.
I mean, maybe 2 pushes. I mean, that's all it's taking, honestly. Maybe not 1 pushover. But
okay, it's you will be surprised to listen that this is not the biggest win. So
it is 500 runs.
No, so it's the biggest in this century, 21st century. I think the biggest one is in 1928 and 34. So yeah, I'm just trying to I just got the years right away. So yeah, so it is.
Was the match between like USA and Australia or something like that?
You never know. I mean, it could involve Australia.
Check Labuschagn's average in that match, no?
At least in USA, is scoring runs.
Yeah.
France features in a lot of those early records, by the way. So it might be a France record.
This is going to be a test match record, no?
Yeah, this is going to be a test match record. In third biggest win in his Test cricket history is what this one.
To be all jokes aside, I think Bangladesh are one of the most difficult sides to play at home. I mean, even when India went there, like. In all honesty, like that series could have gone either way as well. So they've like now I think especially we are seeing a bit of a change in guard also. Like couple of fine young players like Zakir Hussain at the top, Najmul Hussain, who like scored 200. So it's good to see Mominul Haq also back among the runs. So
it'll be useful, Varun, at some future podcast, right? To talk about which is the most difficult place to visit, tour, and win. In my view, I think it's New Zealand is the toughest place to visit and tour and win. And we glibly say that India is hardest or Bangladesh is hardest. I think if you look at the records of even good teams visiting New Zealand and struggling, right? It's damn hard. It's really hard to win there for some reason.
Sri Lanka just entered the chat.
Yeah, even Bangladesh won in New Zealand, right? Recently.
Yeah, exactly.
Bangladesh won.
I think the New Zealand situation is changing for sure.
Yeah.
I maintain that it is Sri Lanka, especially in the post Murli era, when pitches started to do things, and Sri Lanka become like this mythical sort of beast, right? Like I do feel that there is a certain angle to Sri Lankan Test cricket when they're playing in, especially in places like Gaul or the RPS, right? Like where the ball does things. Not square turners per se, but there have been incidences. It is not an easy pitch to win, right? I remember India winning one test because of one pure Sehwag brilliance, and some of them this one, right? So yeah.
Just on a
I think
highlight point.
currently it has to be India, right? I mean, the toughest place to visit. Like, I mean, England did it like 10 years back. Yeah, it's now touching like 10 years now. And after that, I think it will have to be Bangladesh. Australia went there, Australia didn't win. England went there, England didn't win. So they have hosted all the big countries. I don't think there are too many countries who've gone there, nations who've gone there and like come away with a result, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, aggregate level, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, you would put it down to these three countries. And I mean, I completely agree with Vamu's point. Maybe my numbers and information is a little dated, but I remember a time when I think Australia, there was one match in which Warner scored a very, very amazing century, and then the rest of them just like fell by the wayside, and left arm spin basically did the trick for them. So yeah, I mean, those snake pits are really difficult to win at, and I am glad it's like that. I hope all these teams from outside Asia keep coming to India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh and keep losing, and then hopefully Pakistan can turn around their pitch situation as well.
Yeah.
Choppy has given writers in the Anglo-Saxon world a new term along with vicious Turner, snake pits.
No, they've been called that for a long period of time.
I haven't seen it written recently as that.
No, we need to add it. We need to add it to the bingo.
Yeah.
No, just on the point on the margin of defeat. I mean, although in the statistical record it will go down as the third highest margin, I think it's a bit sobering actually as a thought that a team can be so badly outplayed for no fault of theirs. And this is where I think India, being the biggest bully in town, should probably try and see how they can get the other Asian teams to do better. I mean, obviously this is a utopian dream, but maybe going back to we allow Afghanistan players to play in the IPL. Why can't we give them more exposure to our domestic cricket? It's a very competitive league which has a lot of teams, etc. I'm surely you can accommodate them in some shape or form.
And
again,
and it's happened earlier.
I have to interrupt there.
There's history to that.
Wonderful segue into the Duleep Trophy, because this is exactly the segue that I was looking for. We need to talk about the Duleep Trophy. There have been lots of tweets as well on this that have been put out. And did Vamu have a bit of an argument with one of these tweets on
but Hank, before we actually go into it, I just want to public service announcement. There is this southernmost state which has a beautiful coastline. It is called Kerala, and it is spelled as Kerala. We are in 2023, and God's sake, please do not print it out as Kerela or Karela or whatever. And I'm a Kannadiga who's now staying in Tamil Nadu, who's saying that please do not commit this harakiri, because the Duleep Trophy Southern Zone Selectors tweet had the representative for the KCA, which is the Kerala Cricket Association, typed out as Kerela. So please, people, the spelling is Kerala. Please memorize it. It is not Karela. It is not Keral. It is Kerala. Thank you.
There you go. So we have did Vamu, did you have a bit of an argument with some of the selection decisions and so on, the Duleep Trophy selections, and whether Afghanistan players can play a role in it and so on? Take it away.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought. I think we had experimented once. I don't remember whether it was England or some other side who had sent in their
No, this is the
A
time
team.
when we had, remember this, India A, India Blue, India Green, and all those,
No,
that
no,
kind of
no.
stuff.
Even within Hank, I think even within
Yeah.
our Duleep Trophy, I
Duleep
think
Trophy?
once we have had an overseas like A team come and participate, uh, it's I think it's an excellent thought, like especially given the amount of Test cricket even Sri Lanka gets to play these days. We have a northeast zone, which, to be honest, like I don't think. Uh, I mean, it's all well and good to get them in and into the mainstream, but as a standalone cricket team, it's probably going to be a bit lopsided, whatever game they are going to play. So there is a very good case for some of these Asian A teams to come in and participate just to enhance the stature of the Duleep Trophy, especially given the cricket calendar can afford that now. I mean, there's not a lot of cricket happening in the near term in some of these countries. Uh, that I think should be like done without. But the problem really is that all these domestic, all the domestic calendar these days, and it's become like customary post COVID. It's all done at short notice. There is
Indeed.
no long term planning around the calendar, etc. Like you have the Duleep Trophy being like announced a month prior, so there's this confusion. I mean, if you look at the Duleep Trophy semi-finals, they clash with the first test that India will play in the West Indies. I mean, and now you have a phase where you have no cricket for the next 1 month. There is no reason why the Duleep Trophy couldn't have been advanced a bit more so that some of the like top stars could have also played. So, and you have different diktats being given to different zones. So the West Zone selectors seem to have been told that don't pick the Indian Test players. You have KS Bharat being selected for the South Zone side. So it's just like a total mess altogether. Uh, I mean, incidentally, in March, the Irani Trophy match happened. Rest of India played Madhya Pradesh, was it? Uh,
Yeah.
and many of the players who are part of the rest of India side, they don't like find a place in the zonal teams right now. And we have just had the IPL in between. So one case was Baba Indrajit. I think DK put out a tweet saying like, what are the selectors like cooking these days? I mean, it's rare for an ex-Indian cricketer to come out in such strong terms against anything remotely linked to the BCCI. But I think it's slowly getting to a stage where people are not able to make head or tails about many of these things. Kerala's top spinner Jalaj Saxena, like I mean, God bless him. I mean, he can't find a place in the South Zone side. He was the leading wicket taker in the Ranji side, Ranji season last year. You have Washington Sundar being like shoehorned there, like even though he hardly bothers to turn up and play Ranji cricket these days, even when he's not part of the India squad. So it's weird. It's just weird. Similarly, Umran Malik, like he was the talk of the town last year. He is not there as part of the South Zone
Hang on.
side. We
He
have
was the talk of the town only in the IPL, okay? Not in any.
no. I think Hank, like there was a conscious effort to groom him. He was
Correct.
fast tracked into the India A squad also
Agreed.
when we played a few 4 day games, and while he didn't like set the like stage alight or anything, it was okay. I mean, when I see some of the South Zone bowling selections that have been made, they are not like exciting, especially from a fast bowling perspective. I would have Umran any day over some of the others there. So it's a totally mixed bag. I think I mean, Sid Monga did this very good podcast on Cricinfo, like where he asked a question, and maybe it's something that Indian cricket needs to think about having a director of cricket in place, like where there is somebody who is held accountable from a cricketing perspective
The problem is this,
right now.
Varun. So if I may say this, right? The problem is simply this. Indian cricket is obsessed with the money making end of the game, right? It's obsessed. However much we want to disagree with that, That is the reality of the situation. And that is basically IPL and tours and foreign tours, especially to countries like Australia and England, right? That's where the governance of cricket is obsessed. That's what the governance of cricket is obsessed about. So yes, having a director of cricket makes sense, but ultimately what you really need, you have this director of IPL, you have this CEO of IO, whoever, the people wandering around appearing to be extremely busy and doing extremely important things. What you really need is a director of domestic cricket. So you have to really have someone who's the director of domestic cricket. And unless you have that, you're going to have these kinds of things continuously appearing, whereby things don't appear to be cogent with where and congruent with where cricket itself needs to go in India, including questions like what we posed before. Should Afghanistan be the next team as part of the Duleep Trophy? Should we include that, and so on? The director of domestic cricket, not of anything else, because you have too many cooks in that space, and they wouldn't allow anyone with any sense of cricket to come anywhere near that. Okay, I've had my rant.
Yeah, Vamu, just one thing.
I just want to make one quick point, right? Like for the funnel thing, no exciting South Zone thing, right? I mean, we often talk about the bad side of IPL, saying that it is the money making thing, which is the truth. I mean, there isn't a truism as is. But very interestingly, I just want to call out that at the end of this week, Natarajan is going to inaugurate his first cricket academy out of Salem in his village. This is probably one of those things that has come out as the positives of the IPL, right? Like, I still maintain that if it weren't for the likes of if it weren't for the IPL, the likes of Natarajan, a lot of them who are probably seeing spotlight wouldn't have come up, even for a matter an Umran Malik, right? Like Umran Malik's selection has thrown this whole spotlight upon, galaxy brain folks from RCB, but others also going and checking out the pace bowler talent that exists in Jammu and Kashmir, right? Like, because you wouldn't be aware of it, right? And had it been historically, right? So there are positives, I would say, but at the same time, there was a delegation from Karnataka that played against Namibia. So
yep,
I fully bat for this cricket operations, whoever this person will head, and cricket operations will also ensure that now that you've set up this thing for pay parity with women's cricket, right? Who's actually looking at making sure that the women's game also gets an equal exposure, right? Like the pay parity only is a multiplier of how many games that you play, because it's applicable on the match fee and not on the central contracts or on the contract field. So is there some sort of like a parity that you're setting up in terms of, let's say, the number of games the women play, the number of games the men's cricket plays, what's happening at the domestic level, right? Like, and simply to even look at Harakiri, like spelling Kerala properly, right? Like, I mean, it's essential things like this that you need. Yeah. I mean, the whole Duleep Trophy, the whole thing that just sticks out like a sore thumb. So you do need a cricket operations, and yeah, I mean, knowing BCCI, they couldn't not appoint someone. So I mean, this is one of those famous last words, or so to speak. So yeah.
So cool. couple of points, Vamu. So you raised two names. First was Jalaj Saxena, and the second was Indrajit. So specifically to Jalaj Saxena, I think, yeah, like you said, it's unfortunate. But I think in the heart of the hearts, the selectors know that he's probably tipped over the bar. He's 36. He does have a very stellar first-class record, 6,500 odd runs at 35 and 400 wickets at under 25. But I think purely from a future standpoint, they probably thought that Washington, given the fact that he has maximized on all the opportunity he has been given to play for India, is probably the one to go with. Even on the other one about Baba Indrajit, so he had a decent Ranji record. So he scored around 500 runs at round about 50. But if you see the players they have selected in front of him or ahead of him, you have Sai Sudarshan, who had around 600 at a similar average. Mayank Agarwal, obviously the top scorer of Ranji, who scored almost 1,000 runs at 82. You had Samarth who scored 660 at 60, Sachin Baby 830 at 83, and again his teammate PR Rahul who scored 631 at 70. So I think Indrajit's was, I think his selection in the Irani Cup was probably ahead of the queue. Don't think basis those numbers at least he deserves a place in the Duleep Trophy side. So unfortunate for both of
I
them, but I
will
think the
I'll
team, the
tell
selection
you
team has moved on.
who I had a problem with. It was the captain of the South Zone team,
Hanuma
who was
Vihari.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, what I think people are asking for here at the end of the day is consistency around
Yep.
selections. I mean, if
Agree.
you are actually fast tracking somebody, and Baba Indrajit didn't have a great Irani trophy game either. So you just have to like carry through with it. I mean, you can't just give somebody one game and like the next domestic game is nowhere in the picture whatsoever. So I think that's the issue. I don't have a problem. I think to your point around Jalaj, from a South Zone perspective, yes, it makes sense. But then I look at the North Zone team. The same yardstick doesn't seem to be applied for somebody like Jayant Yadav, for example. Jayant Yadav still like gets every like reserve game that is there, and we have seen enough and more of Jayant Yadav to know what he is going to make as a cricketer. So I think that's where it bites a bit, like, and that's what Jalit Saxena sees as well, right? I mean, every time there is an off-spin vacancy in the national setup, India invariably turned to Jayant Yadav, right? And
He
Jayant
made a
Yadav is
century. He made a century on debut. That has got him a ticket for life. Okay, don't argue. So that's essentially what it is. He got a, of course, he got a century against what I would call at that point in time, a weakish team that was still finding its bearings in India. But he scored that century, and that's got him a ticket for life. And there is, when Ashana is injured, bring him in. I know it's hard.
And this is actually a perfect segue for something that we actually didn't talk about in the wake of the whole Ashana speaking to Indian Express and all of that, right? Game number, what is it, 2 or 3 of the Tamil Nadu Premier League. His team, Dindigul Dragons, against the very, perfectly eponymously named Ballsy, which is BA11SI Trichy. This is over number 13. There's an appeal for a card behind. Umpire gives it. Batsman reviews. There is a clear gap between the bat and ball because the bat strikes the ground. The bowler is supposedly frustrated and then takes a review on the not out decision, and the umpire sees the same set of replies and states that it remains not out. So guess Ashana's coping mechanisms for not getting a place in WTC is very weird, right? Like, in first bowler in history to actually take a DRS on a not out decision, right? Thoughts on that?
Hey, Ashana is the Rakhi Sawant of Indian cricket, no?
Srinath Sripath, a friend of the podcast, likes that.
So I completely missed this, and I've been, as Samir has been talking, I've been trying to read up on this, and this is an actual thing that happened.
It's a review of a review.
It's a review of a review. He just read Christopher Nolan on it, right? Like, had there been one more review, it would have been Inception, but this is just 2 layers down. So yeah.
Oh,
they're
wow.
stuck in a movie reference. Cycle gap.
Oh, well, there you go. So it really did happen. It really did happen. We should link the entire thing in the show notes if possible. I find it a bit unbelievable that you can actually, I didn't know that you could actually review a review.
I personally, I don't think it's possible. I think it's just something that must have been like done
Because,
for the TNT.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Logically makes
the protocol is, if you review a decision, you're supposed to review every single aspect of that decision, in the sense all possibilities have to be reviewed, right?
But here's the thing, right? The initial review was taken by the batsman. So the umpire ruled in favor of Dindigul Dragons.
I see, right.
Side. The batsman took the review, and then the third umpire overruled the umpire's decision. So
Got
what
it.
Ashna did was basically, I will take a review on the batsman's review. So that's why. Had it been his own review, he wouldn't have had to take like a review in a review, right? Like it's one of those very unique situations in cricket.
This is quite interesting.
Like
indeed.
how you like I didn't understand it. Like it's still the same, right? It's still nonsense at the end of the day. Like
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
umpire has
clearly.
come back with a decision. Like, why are you going and like reviewing that? I'm not even sure protocol permits for that. It should be. I think like otherwise the umpires wouldn't have done that. But it's just weird all the same.
I think this is Ashwin being the engineer, Vamu, re-evaluation of marks, just to see if he can
An
make
experiment
the
has
case.
to be
So
experiment has to be repeatable, right? And only then you can actually
exactly.
conclude.
Exactly. So, and I quote what Ashta said to the post-match press conference, right? He says, on challenging an already reviewed decision, he says, and quote unquote, DRS is new in the tournament. There was a spike just before the ball passed the bat. I was not quite happy. I thought they'd see with a different angle. Unquote.
Restart the computer, it might work.
This is
Guys,
engineer energy. This is full hostile energy.
a tangential quiz question like Adi. Who was the batsman? This incident.
There's some
I didn't even know
Rajkumar
about the
guy,
incident, so I'm
Raj,
No, it is Baba Indrajit, right?
no, it is Rajkumar.
Yeah, I knew Samir would get this. His full name is R Rajkumar.
Yeah.
The 2013 Shahid Kapoor movie. So obviously you would expect Samir Mohan to get this right.
Oh God. Itna kharab
all right.
reputation
So
ho gaya.
we may have exhausted all the topics today, and we've been going for a little while. But
Just
we have had one
thing.
request.
Just
Sorry,
one
go on.
thing, in the Duleep Trophy, we've had teams from England, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Zimbabwe in the past. And I think, if I'm not wrong, Sri Lanka has even been a runner-up once in the Duleep Trophy. So to Adi's point, it can definitely be done. It just requires a lot of will, to be able to take something like that and really make sure that it is executed. I don't think the priorities are aligned in that manner to have something like this. And the second thing being about Vamu's absolutely unrealistic expectation, having followed domestic cricket for so many years, that zone to zone selection policy philosophy will be same. Rest of India philosophy will be same when it comes to zones. I think the Duleep Trophy has really been mutilated for a number of years now. They had plate versus elite format for some time, then red, blue, green format for some time, and it's just something that's not going to come up to its best for a long time. And I mean, Vamu's expectations are ideal and unrealistic at the same time, is all I can say.
He's an idealist. He's an idealist. Dhimi dhimi boli wali baatein kar Varun Murali.
I know. I'm just curious as to whether the same set of selectors pick all the teams, so or whether there's a different selection committee that does it. So it'll be good
all
to...
these state associations, they send their I don't know, one selector each or something to the zone selection team, and I think the rest of India team is picked by the guys who pick the India senior teams, because it's essentially an India team minus whatever 11, 15 players which are playing for that one state. So yeah, I mean, I think these are things which would have been calmly written off in the past when no one had access to all these domestic stats. But now that Vamu is there, he'll punch holes into all of them.
I think it's fair enough to actually challenge some of these selections on a consistent basis and to
And Choppy, just on your point, when you said, Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe, etc., played Duleep Trophy, effectively Afghanistan is in that same bucket now. So
yeah,
the precedent kind of makes sense.
I mean, England were never in that bucket, no? England, like, when did England need our help to get ahead in cricket? I mean, so if England can do it and we can make way for them, I think this should be very, very easy to do that, given that they're, in Dehradun half of the time. So very easy to do it.
I have a parallel proposal, given that Sri Lanka, like Choppy said, have already been to the semis. Get a Sri Lankan team every single year and call it Duleep Mendis Trophy.
Oh, good one. Good one.
All right.
Good
So
one.
we've had some listener requests and other requests as well to talk about in every podcast, and I'm going to exercise that before we close this. Cricket book recommendations and a segment called "What Are We Reading at the Moment?" So, in terms of cricket books, obviously, if we are reading any cricket books, so cricket book recommendations and what are we reading at the moment? So, I might start with Chopra. Go for it.
I am currently reading this Viv Richards book called Hitting Across the Line. Again, not a book which is very incisive or insightful, um, but I think a lot of what he felt during the reign of the West Indian pace attack, and what he felt about his batting, his time at Somerset, and how he was ousted, and then Botham made way, and then Joel Garner was also, someone who is not in the team anymore, and all of that stuff is there. I would have loved, for him to talk about his batting so much more than what he has done. It's a lot about, what his thoughts are as a person, as a cricketer, and not so much about, for example, his direct hits in the 79 World Cup, or his 189 against England, etc.
Mhm.
All of them are finished off in one sentence each. So in that sense, a disappointing book, to be very honest, even though it's Viv Richards. But I mean, since it's Viv Richards, I had to read it, and that's what I'm reading right now. If there's a book that I would recommend, which I've read in the recent past, it's a book by Martin Crowe, which is called For the Love of the Game. And in that book, the passage or the part that I recommend is he basically makes two 11s of some cricketers from the present and some cricketers from the past, and has them playing an entire imaginary test match at Lords. There's rain, and there's fantastic bowling, fantastic batting, and Don Bradman and Sobers and Sachin and Lilly and Larwood, all of them are in the same imaginary test match, and he has somehow composed a long enough chapter which is just a prose of all of this put together, which is actually poetic. And the other guy who wrote something like this long ago was Leary Constantine, who is actually part of the Martin Crowe, one of the Martin Crowe team. So I love that book. He's very forthright, very incisive, sometimes very controversial and provocative too. But just for that imaginary test match description, I would totally recommend that book to everyone.
Lovely, 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 lovely. Anyone else? Drively. We'll do all that, Adi. So, Adi, what are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading A Summer of Cricket by Tony Lewis about the 75 Prudential World Cup. Mainly got it because of photos by Patrick Eager, including that famous photo of Tomo with his side sling, which I'm not sure will show up well on screen. But yeah, so it's a nice book speaking about the 75 World Cup and each round and how it transpired. So that's me reading, my current reading rather.
Wonderful. Vamu?
Yeah, I am reading something which is like a bit dated. I think most have already gone through it. It's Islands 11. So yeah, I think people have gone through it. So yeah.
We'll put all of this in the show notes. Samir, Vikas, anything to add to what any reading at the moment?
No cricket book at the moment, but I am picking up Islands 11 next after I finish it. So I haven't
We'll
picked it
pick
up.
up recommendations from this. Vikas?
Yeah.
So not reading anything right now, Hank sir. The last book I picked up wasn't too great. It was Sultan by Hay and Wasim Akram. Thought could have been a bit more detailed. Wasn't insightful enough. Very ungay like. But then obviously, if I were to recommend a book, one of my all-time favorites is The Beautiful Game by Mark Nicholas.
Of course.
Obviously, we know him as a very famous cricket commentator, but he was also the captain of Somerset for the longest time. So beautiful book goes into the physics and the metaphysics of cricket. So definitely very well recommended. Highly recommended.
Very good. So and to round off, I'm reading a book which is really fascinating. Is loaned to me, and this is by Megan Ponsford, It's called The Has-Beens and the Never Will Be's, a boy's own adventure of Australian cricket and the Raj. It's Megan Ponsford is the granddaughter of Bill Ponsford, the great Aussie cricketer. It's got a foreword by Gideon Haigh. The book itself is quite an exciting and quite an interesting book about the 1935-36, what we know as the unofficial tour of Australia, the first tour of Australia to India, but it wasn't actually an official tour of India by Australia. So it was in some sense an unofficial tour, but she's gone into some great details. I only started reading this about 2 days back, and I can't put this down. It's just so exciting. It's so beautifully chronicled, and she's gone through she's talked to a lot of people, including Adi's friend Boria, on a variety of things relating to that tour. So yeah, I'll kind of highly recommend this as a very nicely written book of early tours of India. So there you go.
Just one correction, Hank sir. Mark Nicholas was Hampshire captain. Yeah, not.
That's what I thought. I've actually seen Hampshire. I saw a game between Hampshire and Sussex, which Mark Nicholas captained at the Portsmouth ground, and that Hampshire team had Gordon Greenidge and Malcolm Marshall playing, captained by Mark Nicholas, which is quite an amazing. And Essex, if I'm not mistaken, was captained by Graham Gooch at that time, and Gooch scored quite a few runs in that game. This was at Portsmouth many years back. But yeah, good, wonderful. Anything else, lads? If not, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. It's been fun. We've talked about a whole range of things. I'm sure there are lots of things that we haven't talked about that we wanted to talk about, but we've been talking for some 1.5 hours already. And we look forward to.
Thanks, sir. We can't let you have the last word on this one. I think since you had the first word and the first singing word on this one, I know Tony has set the bar very high with his intros, and I was, I know that on the group it was almost like a frivolous request from me, since you, share a passion for music, to do all these musical intros, and I for one have been witness to all the effort that you've been putting in over the last couple of days to do this, because I was the guinea pig of all the previous versions that didn't make it to the pod. So hats off. I don't think it's something you needed to do at all. Regular introductions would have worked just fine, but what you've come up with is fabulous, and yeah, it just feels nice that someone wrote a song for you. So I'm sure all the others also share that exact same emotion. And yep, thank you so much. And now that you've done it once, hopefully you'll do it every single time for all the other 40 people on the group.
No pressure is on.
No pressure.
The pressure is on. Thank you very much. It was actually fun. It was actually fun. Not just, of course, singing is not the issue, but actually writing it. So actually creating the lyrics around it and so on. It was fun. It was a fun experience. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Choppy, for that comment. And it was fun, as I said. I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't fun. Thank you so much, folks. Like, link, subscribe, share, all that sort of stuff, and be back next week for the next episode of Bits and Pieces. Ciao. Bye.
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 All right.